The Middle East is on high alert. Iranian missiles were fired at American targets in 4 Gulf countries. The United States is launching non-stop attacks, and Iran is responding across the Gulf. And other major questions are arising. Will the United States military move closer to a significant bombing campaign that could paralyze the Islamic Republic of Iran? The United States military confirms we have completed another wave of strikes against Iran. And following the American attacks, widespread power outages have been reported across Iran. Today, we will bring you the internal drama in Tehran that is driving the battle over Hormuz. The Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps declared the Strait of Hormuz closed, but the United States says that the southern route is still operating, and frustration is growing across the Gulf. In the United Arab Emirates, officials are already losing patience with Iran, saying that they need to be taught a lesson. The Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps continues to threaten Israel. Iran claims that it destroyed an American HIMARS system in Kuwait worth approximately $5 million. Are they telling the truth, or are they once again trying to sell propaganda? Now, this is no longer just a rumor, because according to security officials, Iran planned to assassinate Donald Trump in Turkey. So while the United States military is striking dozens of targets in order to punish Tehran for violating the freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz, Iran claims that it responded by launching attacks against bases in Jordan, Kuwait, and Bahrain. And Israeli officials said even before the overnight exchanges of fire, we are staying out of it, but that could change very quickly. And meanwhile, energy prices are rising again, and the world fears a return to full-scale fighting. I'm Yair Pinto, coming to you back after a short vacation, still out of the country, and I'm truly missing bringing you the full truth and all the updates about what's happening in Israel. Mati Shoshani is here with me, and this is Boots on the Ground, where we bring you all the information about what's happening in Israel, as well as the full truth about what's happening in our neighborhood, the Middle East. And today's July 13th. And before we begin, I want to remind you that our correspondent, Ashlea Alex, will also be joining us today. So let's begin. For the 4th time in the past week, the United States launched another wave of strikes overnight between Sunday and Monday in southern Iran near the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian television reported that 3 explosions were heard in Jask, southeast of the city of Bandar Abbas. And at the same time, the United States military confirmed the reports and announced, we have launched another wave of strikes in Iran. The United States is preparing to restore the naval blockade on Iran in the Strait of Hormuz, while the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps is taking a hard line and preventing the resumption of negotiations. Washington and Jerusalem are preparing for the possibility of further escalation, while continuing their efforts to prevent Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons. The United States Central Command, CENTCOM, reported that a new wave of strikes against Iran was completed overnight. According to the statement, during the attacks, we struck dozens of targets in several locations using precisely guided munitions. American forces are prepared and ready to ensure the freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz and make sure it maintained for commercial vessels despite Iran's continued unjustified aggression, their harassment, their threats, and arbitrary declarations. The statement continued and stated, the Strait of Hormuz is a vital maritime route for global trade. Iran does not control it. End quote. At approximately 6 o'clock in the morning, Israel time, CENTCOM announced that it had completed a wave of strikes in Iran. During the attack, according to the statement, dozens of targets were struck using precision-guided munitions with the goal of damaging Iran's ability to carry out attacks in the Strait of Hormuz. And according to CENTCOM, the targets included Iranian air defenses systems, coastal radar systems, missile and drone sites, as well as small vessels operated by the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. Once again, the American message was repeated. The Strait of Hormuz is a vital maritime corridor for global trade. Iran does not control it. Early this morning, sirens were heard in Bahrain, apparently following an Iranian attack. Reuters reported that Iran announced that the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps Navy carried out an operation last night to stop two vessels that had violated the instructions and endangered navigation in the Strait of Hormuz by disabling their systems. An official American source said that the United States strikes in Iran continued for more than 3 hours. CENTCOM announced that the strikes were launched under the direction of President Donald Trump with the goal of damaging Iran's ability to attack commercial vessels and civilians in the Strait of Hormuz. An Iranian source told the Maher news agency that a major city in Khuzestan province in southern Iran had been attacked, and at the same time, the deputy governor of the province said that the American enemy had attacked two areas near the city of Ahvaz, which is known for its oil industry. Explosions were also reported in Bushehr province. US President Donald Trump posted an image of heavy American bombers yesterday on Truth Social. Approximately 1 hour later, more than 10 explosions were reported in the Sirik and Bandar Abbas areas. United States Central Command later confirmed that it had begun attacking Iran. And Iranian social media accounts reported power outages in the areas that were attacked, including across the city of El Ahwaz. We should remember that last week, the United States completed 3 rounds of intensive strikes against targets in Iran, hitting more than 300 military targets. The third round reached its peak overnight between Saturday and Sunday after Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps forces directly attacked the GFS Galaxy container ship as it crossed the Strait of Hormuz. The Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps claims that it attacked American military bases in Kuwait, Bahrain, and Jordan. A statement published by the semi-official Fars news agency claimed that during the second phase of the retaliatory operations, the aerospace force of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps fired at major American helicopter maintaining and repair facilities. Also, they fired towards a hangar of P-8 electronic warfare aircrafts and a United States military drone command and control center at the Sheikh Issa Air Base in Bahrain. According to the same statement, they also attacked American surface-to-surface missile launchers as part of the precision drone operation. Look, despite the Iranian announcement that they had closed the Strait of Hormuz, 20 commercial vessels passed through the strait during the past 24 hours. This is in coordination with the United States military. In addition, several other ships crossed the strait without coordinating with Washington. In other words, the Strait of Hormuz has not been closed, as the Iranians claim. And following Iran's unusual declaration that it would not allow ships to pass through the area until what it calls foreign interference comes to an end, the Americans say that the strait remains open. According to an update from the United States and the Joint Maritime Information Center, the southern route through the strait near the coast of Oman is completely open to maritime traffic. In Tehran, officials addressed the division of shipping routes through the strait with Oman. Members of the Iranian Parliament's National Security and Foreign Policy Committee made it clear that Iran will manage the Strait of Hormuz with or without Oman. They added, based on the instructions of the Supreme Leader, management of the Strait of Hormuz will not return to its previous state. Whether it is done in cooperation with Oman or independently, the management of this waterway will remain in Iran's hands. Nevertheless, the threat level in the strait has been classified as severe. The Maritime Information Center warned ship crews that they could be contacted by naval forces operating in this area. The risk of naval mines was also mentioned as a threat. This is enough to change the decisions of shipping companies, of insurers, and energy traders. In practice, traffic through the strait on Sunday was limited, even though the Americans are offering protection and explaining that passage is relatively safe. Tehran's conduct in recent days shows that its objective is to determine who passes through, which route they use, and under whose authority. Iran wants to transform control of the strait from a general military promise into a permanent political and commercial mechanism. That message was made very clear yesterday. Mohsen Razai, the senior military advisor to Iran's leader, described Hormuz as a route whose importance is greater than dozens of atomic bombs. This statement accurately reflects Iran's view of the strait as its central deterrence asset, a tool through which it can enforce the global markets, the Gulf states, and Washington's calculations. Israel is closely monitoring the escalation in the Gulf and is preparing for the possibility that the security situation could deteriorate. Senior security officials say that Israel is coordinated with the United States and is well prepared to respond both defensively but also offensively. And meanwhile, senior security officials confirmed that Israel recently provided the United States with important information regarding an Iranian plan to assassinate President Donald Trump. According to them, Iran's motivation to avenge the death of Ali Khamenei is extremely high and includes the possibility of targeting President Trump or members of his family. Iran has also unsettled scored with Trump because he ordered the assassination of General Qasem Soleimani in his first term, the commander of the Revolutionary Guard's Quds Force. The fact that Mujtaba Khamenei issued an official statement promising to avenge his father's death could, according to the security officials, be interpreted as an ideological or religious instruction to supporters of the regime and extremist networks to act against Trump and the United States. The Iranians are talking and they are taking Trump's threat seriously, that the United States will respond with overwhelming force if he's assassinated, but they remain determined to avenge the death of the supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. From their perspective, this is about preserving national and religious honor. In the Iranian Shiite world, the assassination of supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is not viewed merely as a military event, but also as an attack on the religious and the national symbol of the regime. Iran therefore sees President Trump as its central enemy and as the symbol of American policy against it. According to security officials, the possibility of an Iranian revenge operation against the United States and against President Trump is very real. They emphasize that this is not merely empty boasting, and that Iran is expected to carefully select the target, the timing, and the methods while attempting to reduce the risk of uncontrollable escalation. According to the assessments, Iran is primarily preparing for indirect or covert operations or operations carried out through proxies and not necessarily an open attempt to assassinate President Trump inside the United States. So, as you can see, we have a lot ahead of us. So let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto. With me is Shoshani, and this is Boots on the Ground. We bring you the full truth about what's happening in Israel and about the war against the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Revolutionary Guard's Corps, which is the head of the crumbling axis of evil in the Middle East. And just before we begin, I want to call on you to continue spreading the truth, share our content to as many people as possible. Click on the subscribe button, and most importantly, don't forget to look for me, Yair Pinto, and for Shoshani on our social media accounts to see life in Israel through our eyes. Now let's begin with the news, because many Israelis are still juggling reserve duty while trying to get back to work and handle their day-to-day lives. It's not easy, because your body is tired, your mind is overloaded, and the pressure doesn't stop when the uniform comes off. I've been there, coming home from reserves, trying to be present for my family, catching up at work while still feeling like I'm in this survival mode, if you know what I mean. And it takes strength, it takes energy, and it takes faith to push through. That's why I started using Vinia. It's an Israeli supplement made from red grape cells that help improve the blood flow through your heart, your brain, and your muscles. For me, that meant better focus, more energy, and fewer days of that foggy, burnt out feeling. I started using it during my reserve duty, and I'm still using it today. There's also a coffee version or a tea version if you prefer in the morning. But try it for yourself. I really recommend it. If you want to give it a try, you go to vinyatbnisrael.com. Again, that's vinyatbnisrael.com or call 800-638-1944. That's 800-638-1944. Because faith helped me stay grounded and Vinya helped me stay sharp. And now, we return to our senior Middle East correspondent, Mati Shoshani. Mati, is the United States no longer simply defending freedom of navigation in Hormuz, but beginning to forcibly dismantle Iran's ability to control the strait like a state within a state?
That is a great question. I mean, it's fair to say that in recent days, the conflict that is taking place at a low intensity between the United States and Iran has moved from something focused on the Strait of Hormuz to a more greater regional, let's call it, application of that conflict. We're seeing the U.S. taking more substantial attacks against targets deeper inside Iran. We're talking about targets throughout the country that have strategic, financial significance to the Revolutionary Guards that can hurt them also long term. We've seen them knock out grid. We've seen them knock out bridges. We've seen them go after substantial IRGC targets, not once, not twice, but 4 times in the last week. And the same goes for the Iranians. They're trying to expand this from the boundaries of just inside the Strait of Hormuz to also the countries around the Strait of Hormuz. That's what they're trying to do right now. And they're not doing it very successfully. We need to be honest about that. They're firing here, they're firing there. They released these maps of here's all the targets that we hit, in these different Gulf states. They're all related to the American army bases, et cetera. But in reality, when you really look at the significance, when you really look at the things happening on the ground, the U.S. has upped the tempo of attacks. They've upped the significance and the gravitas, the weight of the targets that are being hit. And they've done so repeatedly in the last week, showing the Iranians that the equation that they were hoping for, which is that they strike something in the Strait of Hormuz, they get sort of a balanced response. That's off the table at this point. They just slowly and surely see an increase in the tempo and increase in the intensity of the American attacks against them. And I think someone there must be running the numbers in their head right now, looking at this and saying, you know what? This might not be working in the way we were planning. They were expecting that they can keep disrupting trade through the Strait of Hormuz, keep firing missiles and rockets here and there, and the U.S. would just, slowly respond to that. But instead, they're seeing a disproportionate response from U.S. forces, and this is even without Israel getting involved in this entire conflict. I'm not sure it's working for Iran. The problem here is I'm not sure Iran cares. The leadership of Iran is a dictatorial regime. They're extremist. They're radical. They don't care about the suffering of their people, and we've seen them hurt their own people repeatedly in the past. So what's going to stop them from continuing in this doctrine? I'm not entirely sure, and I'm not sure there is an answer to exactly that. What the U.S. is doing is slowly but surely dismantling the pieces of power, the mechanisms that allow the Iranian war machine to keep ticking, that allow the Iranian regime to keep working. That is being dismantled in front of our eyes time and time again. Time will tell, probably the next days and weeks, will tell us where this will be going from here, what more the U.S. will be able to do to hurt, to stop, to prevent the Iranians from creating this ongoing disruption, and also a question of how much more pain can the Iranian regime experience and absorb before the public display of their loss becomes so overpowering that they don't want to continue. Again, complicated question without a clear and decisive answer to it. But at the same time, sometimes you take action even when there is no clear answer, even when the way forward only tells you or informs you about the next day and the next days. What I'm thankful for, what I think many people are in the West, in Israel definitely right now, is that the United States is clearly, strategically, and consistently taking action against the Iranians. And they're doing so even when it could have been a weak, feeble, symbolic response. And instead, it's a substantial, a dramatic, and a painful response every time Iran violates whatever is remaining of the ceasefire. That informs me and you at home that this might continue for quite some time, and that the pain points that we're inflicting on the Iranians, that the U.S. is inflicting on the Iranians, they might need to continue until we reach a tipping point, a breaking point, or a point where they deem it worthwhile to have an agreement and a ceasefire and lose face rather than continue sustaining additional bombardments.
Now, Mati, could the attempted assassination of Trump, if this is indeed a genuine Iranian plan, transform this confrontation from a war over Hormuz into a war over the very survival of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps?
I'm not sure the answer to that question is as clear-cut as we're expecting it to be, or as we anticipate it to be. I think there's more here. There's more that needs to be explored. There's more that needs to be understood. The equations of what's acceptable and unacceptable in global diplomacy have changed. And in part, that's because of the United States and the action that it's taken. And I need to say this is not an expression of an opinion, simply just fact. The US and Israel, to a certain degree, in the last couple of years have changed what is acceptable in international diplomacy. In the past, there was this understanding, well, at least since the 70s, let's put it that way, where the CIA was carrying out some very, let's call it, brave and creative operations in other countries, specifically in South and Central America. But to our point, in recent decades, the understanding was you don't go after reigning leadership. You don't remove active leadership. And if you do, you do tactical level, you don't do top level, top brass. And even if you remove people, you usually do it with plausible deniability. It was an accident. It was a explosion. Mysteriously, no one takes action or responsibility for it. That's no longer the case. And just to look at this for a second from the perspective of the Iranians, Israel and the United States have removed, under Trump in his previous term, Qasem Soleimani, the head of the IRGC, and again, the person responsible for their export of terrorism plan, someone who, across the board, again, was considered to be this hero on a national level and the face of their public-facing or international-facing terrorism export. He's gone. He was removed publicly by President Trump. They've swore to take revenge on that, and they have not been able to do that to the degree that they were hoping. They've lost their leadership. Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader, many in the government have been eliminated by Israel and the United States, and they lump this all together as one entity that has allowed itself to remove their leadership. Mujtaba Khamenei, the current supreme leader, hasn't come out of hiding and hasn't released any video footage since he was injured in the beginning strikes of this war back in the end of February. That's how long he's been in hiding. And the reason for that is they're afraid of additional strikes. And they look and they say, you know what? We get it. The rules of engagement are different. Now it is legitimate to strike top brass, legitimate to go after heads of state, legitimate to make threats against global figures. And that was not the case in the past. They made threats against the United States in general. They made threats against Israel in general, but they didn't really go after the individuals themselves, not officially at least. Now with Trump, it's a little different. Trump has made public repeatedly, both while he was campaigning and after that the Iranians have tried to harm him directly. And now, in this last week and a half event, through the memorial services of Ali Khamenei, the previous supreme leader, and even after that, Trump made public and the Iranians made public that they're trying to harm a sitting U.S. president. And that is a violation of every possible agreement. They're trying to create this equation as if, well, if you removed our leader, we can come after your leaders. But I want to say this openly. We're not the same. We are not the same. Iran, Israel, and the United States are not the same when it comes to morality and not for the rules under which their leadership operates. Israel and the United States have leaders that abide by international law, that abide by internal checks and balances within their own governments, that are elected by their public. In Iran, the leadership is a dictatorial regime, not an elected regime. They're evil people who murder their own population, who harm their own population, and do the same to enemies of their state, which is a very long list, including almost everyone in the Western world. So are they a legitimate target? Is Trump a legitimate target because we eliminated the leadership of Iran? No. Israel and the United States eliminated arch terrorists, people that are the nemesis of the free world, people that have sworn their lives to bring death and destruction to others. Those are the people that we eliminated. And they're talking about eliminating reigning, sitting presidents and prime ministers. Not the same moral playing field, not the same world of understanding, not the same world of content. And we need to be clear about this. We need to be upfront about this. We need to be very, very clear in what we say here. Now, I find this alarming. The fact that Trump last week talks about the fact that he's given orders of what happens if a successful assassination attempt takes place against him, that is, from what I'm concerned, or from where I'm standing here, it is a crossing over of a watershed line where he's making public to the fact that he is under threat of a terrorist-natured enemy. Not some rogue player, but the government that's coming after him. And I think the message in response to that needs to be unbelievably clear. It needs to be kinetic in its nature. It needs to be explosive in its application. It needs to be painful against the leadership of the IRGC, against the leadership of the Ayatollahs, the clerics within Iran. And it needs to resound through their echoes of the chambers of their government and their control centers that they should not dare raise a hand against anyone in these countries, because the consequence will be more painful than they can imagine. And I think we're witnessing that right now. We're seeing a shifting of the balance of powers, a shifting of the volume, intensity, strength of the American attacks on Iranian targets. And I hope this continues, not because I have something against the people of Iran, because I believe that their regime needs to be taught a lesson, put in its place, and weakened to the point where their people can rise up against them and overthrow them once and for all.
And Mati, Israel is currently saying we are staying out of it, but that could change very quickly. Are we approaching the moment when Israel will have to decide whether to remain on the sidelines of the American campaign or once again launch a direct attack against Iran itself?
The whole Israel equation in this ongoing conflict now between the U.S. and Iran is a bit interesting, and it's quite anomalous in its nature. Up till now, every round that included the United States included Israel. In fact, it was usually the opposite. It was a round that included Israel, ended up also including the United States. It was usually Israel that was at the forefront of the attack, Israel that was the first one to carry out an attack. And that's not the case here. Somehow, surprisingly to a certain degree, Israel and the United States are leaving Israel out of the picture. And even Iran is leaving Israel out of the picture. Now, I think this tells you a couple things. From an Iranian perspective, they understand that it's not in their best interest to include Israel in the conflict right now. Why? Well, because Israel tends to strike hard and deep in Iran and doesn't play the political game of tit for tat, of you do this and we do that. We've made public of the fact that when we attack, it's at a disproportionate level to what they do to us. And we've done so. We've shown them that we mean business. When it comes to that, we've shown them that they can't involve themselves or can't interject themselves into the equation by operating through Hezbollah or through other proxies. That's one thing. The second thing here is that the United States is on the same page. They don't have a desire or a need for Israel to get involved. They're fully able to carry out these attacks on their own and don't want to turn this into a regional conflict of their own. And Israel is somewhere in the mix on here, which is Israel's looking at all of this and saying, look, what's happening right now between the U.S. and Iran, it interests us, but we don't have to take military action. But there's a bunch of buts here. But if Iran pushes for a nuclear program once more, we have to interject. We have to intervene. And if Iran starts using proxies against us, we have to intervene. And if Iran uses Hezbollah once again against us, we have to take dramatic action against Tehran. So there's a fine line that is being walked right now where Israel doesn't need to respond and doesn't feel pushed into responding. And it seems that Iran is okay with that. In fact, it seems that Iran is happy with that situation. They'd rather that Israel is not part of the equation, is not carrying out bombing missions against them. There is a attrition aspect to this entire war in which Iran is bleeding financially. This costs them a lot of money. They're losing resources. They're paying a substantial price, and they know it. And Israel, on the other end, is able financially to continue sustaining this war, as is the United States. And they need to weigh their steps. How much longer do they keep threatening? How much longer do they put pressure? How much longer do they carry out attacks? Expecting and knowing full well that one way or another, it's going to come back with interest to bite them. And that's really where we are right now. We're in this place where the United States and Iran are exchanging fire at ever-escalating rounds of violence. Iran naturally in the past would have tried to involve Israel in this to take a bigger price, to collect a bigger price from an ally of the United States. The problem is that that ally, Israel, responds disproportionately to Iranian attacks. And they seem to, at least now, not be interested in that happening. Where does that bring us in the next days? I'm not sure. My guess is we're going to see more of this, more and more rounds. My expectation that the most popular step would be for the Iranians to slowly back down from their attacks, to slow down their attacks and hope that this dies out and Trump moves on to the next thing. The U.S. armed forces move on to the next thing. That's my expectation in reality. But I think it could get more interesting. I think there's also the chance that something could flare up in an unexpected way, in a dramatic way, in a quick way. And if and when that happens, then Israel is immediately in the game. We're carrying out attacks in Lebanon, and we're carrying out attacks against IRGC targets in Iran. Either which way, this conflict is with us for the foreseeable future. It's not going anywhere, simply because there's no way to reach an agreement with Iran, and there's no way to stop them from trying to threaten other countries. And that brings us back to where we are. The United States applying military and financial pressure, and Israel being on the sidelines for now, waiting for someone to ring the buzzer and say, time to get back to war. Our hope is for peace. Our hope is for long-term agreements. But if needed, we know how to use power. That's the reality of life here.
So thank you very much, Mati Shoshani. That certainly helped us better understand what we are dealing with. And to all of you, I call on you to continue and spread the truth. Share our content with as many people as possible. Click on the subscribe button, look for Yair Pinto and Mati Shoshani on our social media accounts. Because the latest American wave of strikes lasted more than 3 hours. Fighter jets, naval vessels, attack drones, and unmanned systems struck dozens of targets along Iran's southern coast. Air defense systems were hit first. They were followed by coastal radars, missiles, and drone facilities, communication towers, and the Revolutionary Guard's small attack boats. The operational logic is clear. Iran's power in the Strait of Hormuz is not based in a single weapon. It relies on an entire chain that begins with identifying a ship and ends with firing at it. The radar locates the vessel. The communication systems transmit its position. A command center selects the weapon, and then a cruise missile, an explosive drone, or a fast attack boat is launched. The United States is now trying to break that chain at every possible point. Explosions were heard in Bandar Abbas, Sirik, Jas, Qasem Island, Bashar, and several areas in Khuzestan province. Widespread power outages were reported in and around Ahvaz, near one of Iran's most important concentrations of oil and petrochemical industries. The Americans say that the targets were selected to reduce Iran's ability to attack civilian sailors and commercial vessels. But Iran claims that some of the strikes also hit transportation infrastructure, water pumping stations, and civilian facilities. In several locations, it is still impossible to determine exactly what was hit. And during the previous 3 rounds of strikes, more than 300 Iranian targets were hit. The new wave added dozens more, with the main focus shifting towards the systems that allow the Revolutionary Guards to operate along the Strait of Hormuz. For the first time in this current round, American unmanned naval vessels were also reportedly used to strike Iranian targets. This allows the Navy to attack boats, sensors, and coastal facilities without risking an American crew in every operation. The strikes came after the Revolutionary Guards once again fired at commercial ships. American aircrafts intercepted an Iranian cruise missile and an explosive drone moving towards vessels in the strait. And at the same time, the Iranians claimed that they had stopped 2 ships that did not follow their instructions. So according to Tehran, the ship systems were disabled after they endangered the maritime traffic. This is the heart of the dispute. Iran demands that every ship follow its instructions, use a route approved by Tehran, and accept Iranian monitoring. The United States says that this is an international waterway and that Tehran has no authority to decide who may pass through it. The Revolutionary Guards declared that the strait was closed until American involvement in the region comes to an end. United States Central Command responded with the opposite message. The strait is open, traffic is continuing, and American forces are ready to protect it. The reality is somewhere in the middle. The southern route, close to the coast of Oman, remains active. Some vessels are passing in coordination with the United States Navy. while others are crossing the area independently. During a 24-hour period, approximately 20 commercial ships passed through the Strait of Hormuz in coordination with the United States military. That proves the passage has not been physically blocked, but it represents only a small percentage of the traffic that moved through the region before this war began. For a shipping company, a physical barrier in the middle of the sea is not necessary to close the commercial route. One missile, one report of a naval mine, or one Iranian threat to seize a vessel can cause insurance companies to raise their prices and ship owners to suspend their journeys. That's why Hormuz can be opened on the map or remain closed almost completely economically. The United States Navy has concentrated a major force in the area. The aircraft carriers USS Abraham Lincoln and USS George W. Bush are positioned in the Gulf of Oman alongside more than 20 American warships operating across the Middle East. This force allows the United States to escort vessels, carry out interceptors, attack the Iranian coast, and quickly restore the blockade against Iran's oil exports. Tehran understands the damage. Oil revenue is essential to the regime and to the Revolutionary Guards. If Iranian ships are blocked while the Gulf vessels continue moving through the southern route, Iran will lose both money and its main source of leverage. That is why Iran's response did not remain inside the strait. Iran launched missiles and drones towards the bases and the facilities used by the American forces in Jordan, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, and Oman. Alerts were also activated in the United Arab Emirates. Jordan intercepted 4 missiles that entered its airspace. The Revolutionary Guards claimed that they attacked Prince Hassan Ali base and American systems operating from the facility. In Bahrain, Iran claimed it struck Sheikh Issa Air Base, aircraft maintenance facilities, and centers connected to drone operations. Sirens were heard. Across the country, they were activated. But there has been no confirmation of the extensive destruction that was claimed by Tehran. In Kuwait, the Revolutionary Guards claimed that they destroyed 2 HIMARS launchers, missile storage facilities, and additional American systems. They even claimed that 3 American soldiers had been killed. United States Central Command denied that claim. An official statement said that there were no American personnel killed or wounded in the region and that all service members had been accounted for. Thank God. Kuwait confirmed that 3 border positions had been hit and that a drone attacked an offshore drilling platform. Material damage was caused, and 1 worker was injured. That's very different from the Iranian claim that an entire American missile system was destroyed. Oman was also drawn into the circle of fire. The Revolutionary Guards claimed that they attacked logistical facilities and refueling docks at the port of Dukam that support the American ships and the aircrafts. That strike is especially significant because only hours earlier, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi had visited Oman in an attempt to reach a compromise over the shipping routes. The answer to the diplomatic proposal arrived in the form of drones. The Gulf states continue to say publicly that they prefer calm. In private discussions, however, a very different level of frustration is being expressed. Voices in the United Arab Emirates say it is impossible to reach stable understandings with the Revolutionary Guards and that a much stronger response is required. Until now, the Gulf governments have tried to remain outside the war, but Iranian missiles are striking their territory, their maritime trade is being damaged, and the American bases inside their countries are turning them into targets, even though they never declared themselves parties to this fighting. The military confrontation has now reached directly into the Oval Office, where the decisions are no longer only about ships and missiles, they're also about President Donald Trump himself. From here, I'm handing the report over to our correspondent, Ashlea Alex, with the developments shaking the Trump administration. So Ashlea, over to you in Jerusalem, and I'll be waiting for you here in Finland.
Thank you, Yair. 1 hour before the latest strikes began, President Donald Trump published footage of B-2 and B-1 bombers, two of the most powerful strategic bombers in the United States Air Force. Trump did not provide a detailed explanation, but shortly after the post appeared, more than 10 explosions were heard in southern Iran. United States Central Command later confirmed that another wave of strikes had begun under the president's orders. In an interview that followed, Trump claimed that during the talks in Muscat, the Iranians had agreed to a deal that was, in his words, perfect for the United States. He said Iran had given up its nuclear program and its main demands. According to Trump's version, an Iranian drone was launched at a ship within 1 hour of the meeting ending. The Iranian Foreign Ministry denied that an agreement had been reached and claimed that the president's statements were false. This dispute is important because it exposes the administration's central problem. Even when Iranian diplomats agree to a certain formula, it's unclear whether they are capable of forcing the Revolutionary Guards to carry it out. Iranian officials previously told the Americans that the first attacks against commercial vessels had been carried out by rogue elements within the system. Their message was that they had lost control and that those elements were trying to sabotage the agreement. Washington is now demanding that Tehran publicly declare that all routes through the strait are open, that no fleas will be collected, and that there will be no further attacks against commercial ships. The American position is simple. If Iran cannot honor a basic commitment involving civilian vessels, it cannot be trusted with a complex nuclear agreement. But for Trump, this crisis has also become personal. Intelligence provided to the United States indicated that Iran was making real preparations to target the president during the NATO summit in Ankara. Iranian officials reportedly described his visit to Turkey as an opportunity that might never return. The intelligence was provided to the Americans by Israeli intelligence. The United States Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, confirmed that a warning had been received regarding a specific plan to assassinate the president. The Secret Service decided not to take any risks. Trump left Ankara aboard the older Air Force One aircraft, which is equipped with advanced defensive systems, rather than the new aircraft he received from Qatar, which still does not have the full range of operational capabilities. The boarding procedure was also changed. The president was moved onto the aircraft quickly, away from the cameras and from the normal process that accompanies his departure from official visits. Trump announced that he had left clear instructions in the event that Iran succeeded in harming him. He later wrote that 1,000 American missiles were already loaded and aimed at Iran, with thousands more ready to follow if Tehran attempted to assassinate him. There is no way to know whether that number describes a precise military plan or a message of deterrence. But for the Iranian regime, there's no room for misunderstanding the warning. An attack against the president would not lead to a limited operation against one terrorist cell. It could become the justification for an American campaign against the entire regime. Tension in Washington increased further following the sudden death of Senator Lindsey Graham, one of Israel's most prominent allies and one of the strongest voices calling for action against Iran. Graham died at the age of 71, shortly after returning from a visit to Ukraine. The initial medical findings indicate that his death was caused by an aortic rupture resulting from cardiovascular disease. The toxicology tests have not yet been completed, but at this time no evidence has been published indicating poisoning or the involvement of a foreign government. The claims that appeared online remain speculation. His death leaves a significant political vacuum. Graham was close to Trump, supported the use of military pressure against Iran, and was also promoting new sanctions against Russia. While Americans mourned him, Iranian state television celebrated his death. That reaction only strengthened the feeling in Washington that this confrontation is not being conducted against a normal negotiating partner. The president is now caught between two conflicting demands. He wants to present an agreement that will prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon, but does not want to appear as though he is continuing to negotiate while the Revolutionary Guards attack ships, bases, and American allies. Every Iranian attack reduces the space available for diplomacy. Every American strike increases the risk that Tehran will try to expand the confrontation. Yair, back to you.
Thank you very much, Ashley. And before we continue to the internal struggle inside Iran and the question of where Israel stands, it is important to remember that the report that you're watching here is only part of our work. Yeah, what you see on YouTube is only part of the story. You can get a closer first-hand report, behind-the-scene moments, and stories of faith, resilience, and hope from Israel if you go to tbn.org/journeys/boots. Again, that's tbn.org/journeys/boots, or you can text boots to 316-316 for direct updates from TBN Israel. Again, with me, Yair Pinto, and with Mati Shoshani and Ashlea Alex, which are reporting directly from the heart of the Jewish state to you about what's happening so that you'll know how to pray for the situation. Again, we bring first-hand reports of what's happening on the ground so that you will know how to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and we need your help. We need your help in prayer and in sharing the truth. So, hit the subscribe button, share this video, leave us a like, and let us know where you're watching from. Now, back to Iran, because the more moderate voices inside the regime have almost disappeared from the picture. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi was sent to Oman to discuss the opening of the strait, but he returned to Tehran without any kind of an agreement. Regional officials say that the Revolutionary Guards rejected the compromise and ordered the diplomatic team not to resume the talks. The decision was made following Ali Khamenei's funeral, when the demand for revenge became a central tool in the internal struggle for power. Mujtaba Khamenei promised to avenge his father's death. His message was not limited to Israel or to the American military. He spoke about an operation that would be carried out by supporters around the world. And at the same time, senior Iranian officials are describing control of Hormuz as an asset worth more than dozens of atomic bombs. From their perspective, the strait allows them to place pressure on the United States, the Gulf states, and the global energy market at the same time. That is also why Iran is not satisfied with simply opening a safe route. It wants to determine who will manage the passage after the war. There are three main traffic areas inside the Strait of Hormuz. The northern route is closer to Iran. The central route is barely being used because of the threat of naval mines. The southern route runs closer to Oman and is currently being protected by American forces. Iran is trying to push vessels north into waters where it can inspect them and demand payment. The United States Navy is trying to expand traffic in the south and prevent Tehran from turning its threat into a permanent system. The Memorandum of Understanding, signed less than 1 month ago, did not resolve this issue. It required Iran to make its best effort to guarantee safe passage, but it did not clearly determine who would manage the routes. The United States says that Iran violated the agreement by firing its ships. Iran says that the Americans violated it through new sanctions, military development and deployments, and strikes on Iranian territory. Both sides are now using the other side's violation to justify their next steps. A document that was intended to stop the war has become part of the argument over who restrained it. Israel remains outside the direct circle of attacks for now. Officials in Jerusalem believe that Iran does not want to reopen a full front against Israel because it understands how effective the Israeli response could be. One Israeli official described the situation clearly. We are outside the conflict, but that could change quickly. Israel may enter the campaign if it is directly attacked or if the United States requests assistance. For now, intelligence and logistical coordination are continuing while Israel's defensive and offensive systems remain on high alert. Iran is already warned that Israel will not be protected from retaliation. Israel is taking the threat seriously, but it also knows that Tehran understands the cost of opening another front. Israeli operations against Iran's regional arms have not stopped. In southern Lebanon, the 551st Brigade completed 2 months of operations in which more than 80 Hezbollah terrorists were eliminated and more than 200 terrorist facilities were destroyed. In the Beaufort area, forces of the Alam Special Engineering Unit uncovered a network of tunnels built with direct Iranian funding. The routes including electricity, water, communications, sewage systems, showers, kitchen areas, and even an advanced operating room designed to quickly return wounded terrorists to combat. These findings demonstrate why Israel cannot threaten the crisis in Hormuz as a distant event, because the same regime that operates boats and missiles against commercial ships is simultaneously building military infrastructure inside the mountains of southern Lebanon. The Gulf states, Israel, and the United States are now facing the same question. Can the Revolutionary Guards be restrained through an agreement when Iran's own leadership is either unable or unwilling to control them? The latest American wave damaged the systems, the boats, the command centers, but Tehran's decision to fight for control of Hormuz has not changed. Will Washington continue dismantling Iran's capabilities step by step, or will the next night bring a strike designed to disable them all at once? What do you think will happen? In the meantime, keep spreading the truth. Follow us, hit the subscribe button, hit the share and the like button, and leave a comment. Let me know where you're watching from. Me, I'm currently, if you guessed, I'm in a Finnish sauna, and I'm in Europe reporting the news about what's happening, because it's important for me that you will know the truth and know how to pray for the situation every single day. So I really appreciate you following. You can also look us up at our social media accounts, Yair Pinto and Mati Shoshani, to see the look behind the hard news. And the best thing that you can do is to pray for the situation. And by taking some time away from Israel, I realized that there are amazing people around the world that love and pray for the Jewish people of Israel. It's really encouraging to see that all the way up north here in Finland, that people love God's people. Not because we're special, just because God is faithful. And if there's supernatural hate, there's supernatural love. So thank you so much for that. And God will bless you. Keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.